Hi, I'm Neil Beck. I was a doctor in Perth, Western Australia for 53 years, and in that time I had 500,000 consultations, home and hospital visits, helped 800 babies into the world, and because we hadn't had a medical school and we were short of specialists, I did a lot of tonsillectomies and appendicectomies and broken bones, and as well as broken families and broken hearts. And I came to the conclusion that the three most important things in life are, first of all, being mentally healthy, secondly, having enough good relationships, and thirdly, not having any addictions. They're the big three. Or if you want to know the big seven are mental health, good relationships, high endorphins chemistry. Endorphins are endogenous morphines. They're chemicals that our brain and glands produce that help to relieve pain and distress. Very important. The fourth important thing is having a strong immune system. Our immune system is cells and antibodies and chemicals in every part of our body that fight infections, allergies, inflammation, autoimmune diseases and cancers. And the immune system is mainly managed by the endorphins chemistry, so that makes the endorphins chemistry very important. The fifth important thing is to have a good home. One of the biggest differences between a good life and a bad life is having a good home or not having a good home. So you should think about getting a good home from pretty early on in life and start to save and plan. I'm sorry that wasn't more emphasized when I was a young man. And the sixth thing is a good education, and the seventh thing is a good job. In developed countries, there's plenty of almost everything, and if you've got good mental health, you're going to get what you need sooner or later. But if you've got bad mental health, you may never be able to get some of the things that you most need. A conclusion I reached was that there was never going to be enough mental health carers, professionals to help all the people who need mental health care and addiction care. Just never enough. A lot of people getting no help and almost nobody getting enough help. And this created a vicious cycle in that the longer people waited to get help, the more problems caused problems, which cause more problems, and the more difficult sorting them out gets. And that makes the waiting list even longer. Today we do everything with tools. If we need to do something, we need good tools. That good tools help us to do things faster, better, cheaper. Good tools, so important. But the problem with mental health and addiction was that the two main tools, which are medicines and consultations, both have great weaknesses. So many medicines are addictive. The people who take medicines want to take medicine and get better quickly and be able to stop taking it. But the people who make medicine want them to take as much medicine as possible for as long as possible. And the pharmaceutical industry achieves this in two ways. It makes as many medicines addictive as possible so that people get hooked on them. The commonest mental health disorder is worry, anxiety. There are many different kinds of worry, anxiety, general anxiety, social anxiety, separation anxiety, panic attacks, obsessive compulsive disorder, and all sorts of phobias. And almost all the medicines for worry, anxiety are addictive. Originally, when I started, it was barbiturates, and all the barbiturates were addictive. And then in the 60s we got these wonderful new medicines, Valium, Seroprax, Mogadon, Xanax, and the benzodiazepines, and they were all addictive. And then we got Ambien and Silnox, and Ambien and Silnox are addictive. I still remember an elderly man referred to me by another doctor because he was taking 17 Silnox Ambien tablets a day, 17 a day. And I remember a family, a mother, grandmother, and a head-injured son. And the mother was taking about 9 Stilnox a day, the grandmother was taking about 12 Stilnox a day, and the head-injured son, as well as being an alcoholic, was taking about 15 Stilnox a day. So many medicines addictive. Now, I'm a big believer in good medicine, but I never, ever, ever recommend anyone to take anything that's addictive. It's not necessary. What's not generally recognized is that pharmaceuticals became very big in the second half of the last century, from about the 1960s onwards, and all the major health problems that required medicines had medicines made for them, and those medicines are very proven, and some are not so good, and some are still the best we've got, but they're all out of patent, so they're cheap. But the pharmaceutical companies don't talk about them because they'd rather sell you a new medicine which they've still got a patent on, even though the new medicine might be 10 times as costly but no better. Sometimes not as good. Sometimes better, but often no better, and sometimes not as good as the original medicine. For instance, the best medicine for anxiety, relaxation, and alcohol and cocaine addiction is baclofen. And baclofen is a 1920s medicine. It was developed in the 1920s for epilepsy, and they got better medicines for epilepsy, so it stopped being used for epilepsy, but it was still the best medicine for muscle relaxation. So about 30 years ago, when I was looking after 100 paraplegics and quadriplegics in a quadriplegic centre, I used a lot of baclofen because paraplegics and quadriplegics, people with spinal injuries, get terrible muscle cramps, and baclofen was the best muscle relaxer. What I didn't realize at that time was that it was a very good tranquilizer, and it was very good for cutting people's alcohol and cocaine addiction. But what happened was that I think about 1999 in New York, a woman doctor had a young man who was a paraplegic who was a cocaine addict, and he'd not been able to quit the cocaine, and when he got muscle spasms, she gave him baclofen for the muscle spasms, and he just quit the cocaine. That got written up in the New York newspapers, and a famous cardiologist in New York read about this, and this famous cardiologist, Dr. Oliver Amerson, had a terrible alcohol problem because he had a terrible anxiety problem, and he'd tried every medicine and every treatment for alcoholism, and he'd had to stop practicing as a doctor because of his alcoholism and his blackouts, and he just wasn't safe. And when he read in the newspapers about this paraplegic man quitting cocaine with baclofen, he thought, well, maybe that might help his alcoholism. So Dr. Amerson, Olivier Amerson, took baclofen, and it really fixed his alcoholism. It was so good that he could have one drink and stop, which is very unusual because mostly with alcoholics, if they have one drink, they're gone again. So Dr. Olivier Amerson wrote the book, The End of My Addiction, and I read that book, and at that time I was treating a lot of heroin addicts, and the benzodiazepines, the heroin addicts needed calming medicines, but so many of the calming medicines were addictive. But then I found that baclofen was very good for heroin addiction. Yeah, baclofen is very cheap. It's 100 years old, out of patent, but the pharmaceutical companies never tell you about it. So I'm very grateful to Dr. Amerson for his book, The End of My Addiction, about baclofen. I used it on hundreds and hundreds of heroin addicts. One of the best health and addiction medicines is naltrexone, and naltrexone is a 1963 medicine, so way out of patent. In about 1960, the scientists discovered that heroin has its effect by landing on opiate receptors on the cells in your brain and affecting the brain cells. These opiate receptors were discovered in about 1960, and they thought if we can make a medicine that blocks the opiate receptors, we'll be able to block heroin addiction. So in Long Island, New York in 1963, they developed naltrexone, and it totally blocks heroin, and it totally blocks alcohol, and it totally blocks opioid painkillers. But there was a problem. They got the dose horribly wrong. The dose that the FDA approved in 1984 was 50 milligrams, and people just couldn't take 50 milligrams of naltrexone very well because it had so many bad side effects. And what they didn't realize is that we have opiate receptors because we produce opiates. Our endorphins are opiates, and they act through opiate receptors, and if you block the opiate receptors with 50 milligrams of naltrexone, you block heroin, you block alcohol, but you block your endorphins as well, and you feel terrible. So people just stopped taking the naltrexone fairly quickly. The New York Addiction Commissioner, a very smart man, I'll think of his name in a minute, he had 41 methadone clinics under him in New York, and he was looking for something better than methadone. Methadone is terrible stuff. So when they approved naltrexone in 1984, he gave it to a couple of dozen of his heroin addicts and found that they couldn't stay on it because of the side effects. And he realized that 50 milligrams was just too much. So he trialed 1 to 10 milligrams, and he found that 3 milligrams worked wonderfully. And 3 milligrams, what it does is it blocks the opiate receptors for 3 hours, and then it wears off. And in that 3 hours, with the opiate receptors blocked, your body fights back and produces increased amounts of endorphins to try to override the blockage. And after 3 hours, when the 3 milligrams of naltrexone wears off, you're full of, you've got 250 to 300% increase in endorphins, and you feel much better, and it's fantastic aid for heroin addicts. But there was still a problem. The problem was that even 3 milligrams of naltrexone gave anyone with any heroin or opioid painkiller in them terrible side effects unless they stopped the heroin or the opioid painkillers for 3 days, which was very, very difficult. Not very many people could stop for 3 days. And about that time they discovered that in New York they had HIV. They didn't know they had HIV. A lot of people who they thought were dying from heroin were actually dying from HIV, and they became much more worried about HIV than heroin. And also they found that the boosting of endorphins by low-dose naltrexone helped many people with cancer. I think that they treated about 350 cancer patients. This New York addiction commissioner, what's his name, I'll think of it in a minute, but and about half of them got better. The first one he treated was the widow of a close friend who had a malignant lymphoma. She'd had it 5 years before and had it treated with chemotherapy and got better, but after 5 years it came back and the chemotherapy didn't work the second time, so he gave her low-dose naltrexone, and the boosting of the endorphins by 250 to 300% boosted the immune system to the point where she recovered from her lymphoma recurrence and lived another 9 years and died of an unrelated heart attack. And then the New York Addiction Commissioner went to a conference in Paris in 1986 and met a woman doctor at the conference who had malignant melanoma, and she had 4 patches of malignant melanoma in her brain and was on her way out, and he put her on low-dose naltrexone and she lived for another 18 years. So he became much more interested in HIV, which was an infection, and the boosting of the immune system by low-dose naltrexone helped with HIV, and the boosting of endorphins, which boosted the immune system, cured about half of his cancer patients. And he didn't do any more about the problem that 3 milligrams was gave terrible side effects to anyone who had any heroin or any opioid painkiller in them. I didn't know about this because I didn't get my first computer till I think it was 2006, and it stayed under my bed for 3 years before I got brave enough to learn to use it, being from an old untechnical age group. But we had a big epidemic of heroin addiction in Perth in the late 1990s, and I trialed from 1/8 to 1.5 milligrams of naltrexone on heroin addicts, and I found that a heroin addict with heroin or opioid painkiller in them could tolerate 3/4 of a milligram of naltrexone without side effects, and that stopped their craving for the heroin for about an hour. and after an hour you could give them another 3/4 milligram, and that would stop their craving for another hour, and then they'd start to crave again. And what was happening was that the heroin levels were going down, and some of the opiate receptors were becoming empty, which is what caused the craving. And when you gave such a small dose, 3/4 milligram of naltrexone, that just filled the empty opiate receptors, whereas if you gave them 3 milligrams, it filled the empty ones, but it pushed the heroin off many of the full ones, which is what caused the terrible side effect. So what I found was that if I gave people 3/4 milligram of naltrexone every hour for about 10 hours, they could then tolerate 1.5 milligrams of naltrexone, and they only needed to take that every 2 hours. And after 36 hours of that, they could tolerate 2.25 milligrams of naltrexone, and they only did that every 3 to 6 hours. And soon they'd been off the heroin for 3 days, and then they could tolerate the 3 milligrams of naltrexone every evening, and that boosted their their endorphins by 250 to 300% overnight, and that helped them to not need heroin. And if they carried the low-dose naltrexone in their pocket and they were tempted to relapse, they could just take some naltrexone any time and immediately block the craving. So I developed pocket powder medicine dispensers to put the naltrexone, low-dose naltrexone powder in, so that anytime, anywhere, you can just whiz it out of your pocket and drop the powder on your tongue and suck it. You don't swallow it. If you swallowed medicine take half an hour to an hour to start to work, but powder medicine dropped on your tongue and sucked gets into the blood vessels in your tongue. Your tongue is pink or red because the blood vessels are so close to the surface, and the medicine gets into the bloodstream in 5 minutes. It starts to work, and that's fast enough to prevent relapse to alcohol or to heroin or to opioid painkillers. Where am I up to? Yeah, so the reason why there was never going to be enough mental health care professionals to help all the people who needed mental health care was that their tools were weak. There were only 2 tools. One was medicines, and so many medicines were addictive. All the anxiety medicines, all the sleep medicines, the 3 main ADD medicines, all addictive, which created terrible problems. And secondly, the medicines were nearly always tablets or capsules which you swallowed, and swallowed medicines take half an hour to an hour to start to work, which is just too slow for a lot of mental health problems and a lot of addiction problems. If you're trying not to have a cigarette, not to drink alcohol, not to have heroin, you can't wait half an hour or an hour when you get the urge. You want it much faster. So what happens then is that if you're going to use swallowed tablets, you have to take them 2 or 3 times a day, every day, whether you need them or not, in case you need them, because they don't work quick enough. But if you take powder medicine and you've got it in your pocket and you can drop it in your tongue in a few seconds, anytime, anywhere, and it starts to work in 5 minutes, that's fast enough that you only need to take it when you need it. So some days you might not need it. Some days you might need it twice. Some days you might need it 3 times. But you can just take it when you need it. And what I found is that when you just took it when you need it, seemed to work better than if you took it routinely 2 or 3 times every day. Yeah. And the other tool, so medicine, addiction problems, addictiveness, and too slow. and consultation therapy too slow and too expensive. When you see a new heroin addict or alcoholic, you need at least an hour with that person to understand all their problems, what caused the problems, what's making the problems worse, how to make the problems better. You need an hour, and you just don't have an hour. Talk therapy or consultations are too slow, and they're too expensive, because to be a therapist you have to have long training. To be a psychologist or a psychotherapist, you usually have to have at least a 4-year university degree, or maybe a 5-year master's degree, or a 6 or 7-year PhD. And to be a psychiatrist, you have to take a general 6-year medical training, and then do some general medical work, and then have 3, 4 or 5 years of psychiatric training, so 10 or 12 years. So those people have to be pretty smart, and they had very long, costly training, and they need to be paid well. So consultations were slow, and they're expensive, because the therapists, because talking is slow, and the therapists needed to be paid well. So what we needed is better tools. And 22 years ago, I started to develop better mental health and addiction tools. And the first one was a checklist. I made a checklist of 20 questions and got one of my assistants to see the patients first and do the checklist, and then I could just read the report, and I could do in 15 minutes for that patient what took me 30 or 40 minutes if I didn't have the checklist. So that I was so busy, had so many people wanting treatment, that I had to try to save time by doing that. And the next thing was videos. There's no faster, better, cheaper, more convenient way to understand a mental health illness than to watch a 1-minute video on it. My original video about 15 years ago was about 10 minutes, I think, and I had 10,000 viewings in 9 months, which was very good. So I made a lot more. I had 31 long videos, but then people stopped watching long videos, and I found they were all watching TikTok 1-minute videos. So I then had to make TikTok 1-minute videos. So I've now got 83 under a minute TikTok videos at my website, mental health videos A-to-Z.com, mental health videos A-to-Z.com, which was a website, but the website is too long, and I don't even want to do short videos. I wanted a short website. So now I've got another website, which is only a page and a half, and it's got everything on it, and you can just tap links, and that website's called smilefixit.com, smilefixit.com. And yeah, so the tools were website, checklist, and then we made an app, because an app was a much better thing than a checklist. But apps are hard work and cost a lot of money. So I only got the app, the Mental Fix-It app, about 18 months ago. But now you can, on your phone, just tap the App Store or the Google Play button and download the Mental Fix-It app in a few seconds. It's free, and then you can tap your choice of answers to its questions. But originally the Mental Fix-It app was 10 minutes, because it asked 38 questions, and that was too long. So we had to reduce it to 19 questions and 5 minutes, and now we reduced it to 2 minutes on the Android version, and soon we'll reduce it to 2 minutes on the iPhone version. Then what I realized was that I really needed to do live streaming and scrolling. That's what people were up to. They'd gone from long videos to 1 minute videos to live streaming and scrolling. TikTok only started, I think, in 2016, and it has over 1 billion visitors every month, over 1 billion visitors to TikTok every month. And it's mostly because so many people just love scrolling. They race through all this information. Why do they do that? I didn't know why they did that, so I did a ChatGPT search and found that ChatGPT said that people love scrolling because it seems to boost their mood. They feel better racing through all that information, and triggers their imagination and their creativity. They see so many things, and they might discover some new things, some new ideas and so on, and scrolling is addictive. So now I've spent 3 months working on what I call Scroll Plus. Scroll Plus. That is, there are 89 items in Scroll Plus, 89 wants, needs and solutions for mental health and addiction problems. And you can scroll through all those items in about 6 minutes. But the reason why you can cover so much ground in scrolling is there's no detail. But you want detail. But you only want detail about what's important to you. When I was a medical student, my medical textbook had 1,200 pages in it. So much information about so many things and so much detail. But a sick person might only need to know 10 pages of that 1,200 pages. So what we've done with Scroll Plus is you can scroll the items. Sorry, you can't yet. I've done it, but my tech guy hasn't managed to get it up yet, but it's going up at this very moment, and it'll be available in a week or two. You can scroll through the items, and every time you come to an item that is important to you, you've got anxiety, you come to anxiety, you can tap that item and see a 6 to 16 second video on anxiety. Or you got an alcohol problem, you come to alcohol, you can tap that and see a 6 to 16 second video on alcohol or whatever, insomnia or heroin or ice or whatever. So Scroll Plus means you can scroll through everything quickly and you can get information just on the things that are important to you, and the initial information is a 6 to 16 second video. Well, some of them are 20 seconds, but they're very short. And so if you've got enough time, if you've got 15 minutes, you can scroll through the lot and watch 10 short videos that are important to you. But if you haven't got 15 minutes, or your concentration doesn't only lasts 3 minutes, you can do 3 minutes, and you scroll as many items as you can, and you just watch. And when you feel that you've done all you can do, when you just tap the enough button, and the enough button then gives you an immediate feed out list of the videos that you've chosen to watch, because they're about things that are important to you. And if and you keep repeating doing the scrolls, and every day or every second day or twice a day, just whenever you can, you do them. And if with any item any want, need or solution, you haven't tapped the 6 to 16 second video twice in a row, then that item is obviously not important to you, so the program hides that item. So the next time you do the scroll, you just see the items that you've tapped and watched the videos of, and that might only be, say you did 30 items and there were 5 that were of interest to you. Well, the next time you see those 5, you can watch the videos again then if you want to, and then you see some more items. So after about 2 or 3 or 4 scrolls, you've got through all 89 items and you've got a list of all the videos about items that are important to you. And then every item that you've tapped on and seen its 6 to 16 second video has a link to a 1 minute video. So if the 6 to 16 second video helps you, then you can get more information from the 1 minute video. And then if you want, if you're getting a lot of help and you're happy with this, you can do the Mental Fix-It app, which at present is 5 minutes on an iPhone or 2 minutes on a Android, and that gives you the 6 of our under 83 under a minute videos that will most help your mix of problems, because people never only have one problem. Your brain's not very big. If this part of your brain not working very well, then that part's affected and that part's affected. So usually people have 2, 3 or 4 mental health problems: anxiety and depression and insomnia, ADD, ADHD and post-traumatic stress disorder and something else. So they have to know which of our 83 videos to watch that help them with all of their problems, and they find that out either by doing the Scroll Plus repeatedly, or once they've done the Scroll Plus a few times, doing the Mental Fix-It app and getting the 6 videos that have helped them most. To overcome the problem, the speed, I made powder medicines, just ground up the tablets and put the powder in dispensers like this. We've also got another tool which is not yet widely available, but this is a fruit powder dispenser, because 60 to 65% of our life is habits. Our brain is so busy it can't consciously manage everything. A lot of things have got to be made automatic and unconscious, and that's called a habit. So 60 to 65% of our life is automatic unconscious habits, and things become habits when you do them lots of times, and their triggers and their underlying electrical and chemical messages get strong, and then they're hard to stop. But as we age and the world changes and we change, our circumstances change, sometimes we need to be able to make new habits, and sometimes we need to be able to stop old habits which have become counterproductive. And one of the blind spots in mental health is that nobody seems to place much emphasis on making and breaking habits. But I think it's very important. And tasty fruit powder helps that. There's a global terrible epidemic of obesity and diabetes because we have too much sugar in our diet and our drinks. Sugar is cheap, People love the taste, and it's as addictive as cocaine. If you don't believe that, I didn't believe that at first, but you do a ChatGPT search, you'll find that sugar is as addictive as cocaine. The problem is that we don't need many calories now because we all sit at a desk. One of my grandfathers was a farmer and the other was a blacksmith. They both worked 60 hours a week, 6 days a week, hard physical yakka, and they needed 3,000 or 4,000 calories a day to do all that physical work. Now I and 14 of my 16 children and grandchildren sit at a desk, and we get fat if we had 2,000 calories a day. Well, I did get fat, but fortunately I managed to lose it now. And so sugar got cheaper and cheaper and got in everything. Chocolate, lollies, cakes, biscuits, drinks, cereals, everything full of sugar. And so I thought, if I put lovely tasting fruit powder in a pocket dispenser, people have it in their pocket, and whenever they're tempted to have sugary stuff, they can whiz it out and have a lovely taste instead of fruit powder, which is natural and healthy. It's tasty, like sugar is tasty, but it's natural and healthy and not high in calories, and it has fibre in it, which is good for our gut flora. So I'm getting 5,000 of these made in Ningbo in China. They'll be available in about a month or two, and people will be able to have. They're so cheap. They'll have 3 or 4 of them, and my favourite tastes on the trial ones that I've got are vanilla and chocolate. But you can have 3 or 4, and you have chocolate on Monday and vanilla on Tuesday and raspberry on Wednesday, and whatever you like whenever you like it. And I hope that that'll help to reduce the epidemics of obesity and diabetes. But in addition to that, you can use a lovely taste to make and to break habits. Some habits we don't enjoy very much. It's a bit of a chore doing them, like exercise or learning a language or learning a musical instrument or studying a book, and it's a bit of a chore. I've got about a dozen favourite books, most of which I've read somewhere between 6 and 10 times, and so I've got the reading habit, and it's not a problem for me, but for a lot of people reading these days is a problem. And although the 1-minute videos give great information, for some things it's best if they watch a 10-minute video or they read a book. For instance, one of my most important books is the book on habits, and that's 300 pages. So what you do, if there's a habit you want to make, every time you think about doing that habit or you do that habit, you have a lovely taste. And when you think about it again or you do it again, you have another lovely taste. And the lovely taste makes it easier. It's a sort of like a bait or a hook that gets you to repeat things, and repeating things over and over and over again is how you make the triggers and the underlying electrical and chemical messages stronger. And how do you break habits? Well, breaking habits can be very hard. Stopping alcohol, drinking a bottle of scotch every day, stopping drinking 30 cigarettes a day, stopping having a shot of heroin every day can be very difficult. But what you have to do is you have to weaken the triggers and weaken the underlying electrical and chemical messages. And you do that by delaying and doing less of the habit. So you take smoking, for instance. If you smoke 30 cigarettes a day, it's very hard to stop. But what you can do is every time you get the urge to have a smoke, you have a lovely taste instead, chocolate, vanilla, whatever, and you focus on the lovely taste, and you try not to think about the cigarette. And as the taste wears off and you start to think about it, have another taste, and have another taste, and you put off smoking for 15 minutes. And you only smoke 3/4 of the cigarette and chuck the last quarter away. And that weakens the trigger and weakens the electrical and chemical messages that underlying the smoking habit. And that allows your natural chemistry to come back more normal. And then it's easier to delay the habit even longer. Instead of delaying it for 15 minutes, you can delay it for 20 or 25 minutes. Instead of only chucking 1/4 of the cigarette away, you can chuck half the cigarette away. So if you just keep on doing that, having a lovely taste several times before you do the habit that you're trying to stop, with smoking, you can cut your smoking fairly comfortably by 1/4 about every 1 to 3 weeks. So after 3 to 6 weeks, you've cut it by a half. After 6 to 9 weeks, you've cut it by 3/4. After 3 months, you can just quit, and your chemistry has come back to normal. A much smaller amount of nicotine has a more satisfying effect, and until the amount of nicotine you're having is so low that you can just quit. Well, there we are. So I was telling you about the tools. That's tool number 8. Tool number 6. That's tool number 7, heartbeat meditation aid. And tool number 10 is the Scroll Plus, which is being put online now and should be available in a week or so. But live streaming is a very important tool, and so I started to do that about a year ago, and I do it on Wednesday, Friday and Saturday at 7 p.m. Perth time and 9 a.m. Sunday Perth time. 7 p.m. Perth time is 7 a.m. New York time, 4 a.m. LA time, God knows what London time and Norway time and Sweden time, and we found that we were getting about 1/3 of our viewers from the Northern Hemisphere, so I now do the Sunday session at 9 a.m. Sunday, which is a more civil hour, user-friendly hour in the Northern Hemisphere. So today is Saturday. I'll be back again 9 o'clock in the morning Perth time, and then again next Wednesday, Friday and Saturday at 7 p.m. Perth time. If you've got any comments, questions or criticisms, please send them to me through the platform that you watch. We do this live streaming on TikTok, YouTube Shorts, Facebook and Instagram. Sometimes I have difficulty with the technology, pressing the right buttons to get Instagram and Facebook, but I think I got them all today. And so you can send me comments, questions or criticisms, and I will respond to those in the next hour and again tomorrow morning. Or you can email me. I always respond to emails. The email address is at my website smilefixit.com. At the website smilefixit.com you can find the email address, which is healthestuff@gmail.com, healthestuff@gmail.com. So I look forward to hearing from you. I can't talk to people because there's so many, but usually I respond to about between 100 and 200 comments and questions and likes and emails after each live streaming. So thank you for watching, and I'll be back again tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Perth time.